A Leeds as good as promoted and a Luton as good as relegated. Here's my roundup of round 34 in the Championship. Starting on Friday night, unfortunately, and I'm not going to spend too long on this, believe me, Bristol City 2, Boro 1. Obviously reviewed this on the channel already this weekend. More of the same from Boro, really. Another terribly tepid, poor, weak performance. Despite taking the lead in this one, Bristol City were by far the better side for the majority of it, especially the second half where it was attack versus defence. Bristol City beating a playoff rival in a big game, a huge 3 points for them, and it also bolsters their already fantastic home record. As for Boro though, it's 5 defeats in a row. Michael Carrick's job is hanging on by a thread at the moment, it would seem. A team massively low on confidence with a team that, well, couldn't defend previously, can't defend now at all, with a defence that has only gotten weaker, as well as an attack that looks incredibly disjointed. So I don't know where Boro go from here without a change of manager or tactic or formation. Our season really is on life support at the moment, but Bristol City are right in amongst the playoff battle. Burnley 4, Sheffield Wednesday 0. That's more like it from Burnley. That's more like it from an automatic promotion contender. They had to lay down the law on Friday night. They had to make a statement ahead of a big weekend with, of course, Leeds and Sheffield United especially playing one another. They knew they'd gain ground on one, if not both, of the two teams above them, and they did it in style. It was more like the Burnley we saw at times in the start of the season, where they were incredibly clinical in front of goal. You actually look at the chances that both sides had. Sheffield Wednesday had their fair share and actually started the game the better of the two, you would say. But as it went on, when Burnley were on top, they got themselves in front, and then every time they had an opportunity, they managed to score and extend their lead and go away with what ended up being a very convincing win. So it's not a game that Sheffield Wednesday should dwell too much on. You know, the top 3, top 4 are just in a different league at the moment in the Championship, so it's how they react. But Burnley have massively boosted not only their confidence, but their chance of chasing down the top 2. Derby 0, Millwall 1. A huge blow this for Derby County. It looked like maybe they'd get away with a point in this one, and I wouldn't say they were all that great. I think Millwall definitely edged this game, created the far better opportunities, and would have probably been massively disappointed to not come away with a victory, and they nearly didn't, with Josh Coburn missing a very late penalty, but making amends shortly afterwards, scoring the winner in the 95th minute. It compounds a continuation for Derby, a run of really bad form where they've really found themselves in deep waters at this moment in time, and quite honestly, they don't look like they're going to get themselves out of it. John Eustace needs to get his era up and running at Derby sooner rather than later. But it's a huge 3 points for Millwall, and they're another side who are right in amongst this absolute playoff scrap. Plymouth 1, Cardiff 1. Not sure this is a result that is good for either of these two teams, if I'm honest. Both are obviously either side of the dotted line at the bottom of the Championship. And I feel like maybe for Cardiff it's more of a missed opportunity in hindsight. I know in isolation, looking at the game, they were down to 10 men, so coming out of it with a point isn't too bad. It's one of them where you look at it and think, well, it could have been a whole lot worse. So maybe they will just take a point going to home park at a Plymouth side who've been good at home recently, but they've not exactly pulled themselves away from Plymouth as maybe they would have hoped. It's allowed Plymouth to stay within the same distance of Cardiff, so it's potentially a positive for them, but it doesn't really keep either side in a comfortable position whatsoever. Plymouth just inside the bottom 3, Cardiff just lingering above it. Sunderland 0, Hull 1. Sunderland's first defeat at home this season. Hull City are home wreckers. They went to Sheffield United, won 3-0 not too long ago. They've went to Sunderland, won 1-0. It's impressive, to say the least, how great they've been on the road of late. They just need to sort themselves out at home, and maybe they would be a decent Championship outfit. Don't get me wrong, they're doing well under Ruben Sellers, and I think there is progress there, and this is a huge result for them, and maybe there are foundations to be positive about the future for Hull City. So it's a great result for them, but my word, what a blow it is for Sunderland. They have just started to fall away of late, which you kind of would expect. The top 3 are just on another planet when it comes to their squad and how relentless they are at the top of the league. So for Sunderland to stick with them for as long as they have done, for 30 plus games, is unbelievably commendable. But they are starting to just run out of steam now and fall away. But that's okay, because they are so comfortably in the playoffs. It's still, in hindsight, when they look back, they'll be disappointed that they're probably out of the automatic race now. But it's still a very comfortable playoff finish where you'd like to think they'd be massive favourites to at least make the final. So there'll be disappointment. I was very, very surprised and a bit perplexed by the boos at full time at the Stadium of Light, if I'm honest. This is a manager who's took a team who was 16th last season and had them fighting for top two for 30 plus games with a very young squad up against teams with huge resources. I think he's done an outstanding job and doesn't deserve that kind of reception. I thought it was incredibly harsh by the Sunderland fans. But I think in hindsight, when they get to the playoffs, they'll still look back at this as a very successful season. And I'm sure, regardless of this result, they'll still be there and they'll still be right in contention. Coventry 2, Preston 1. Not only have Coventry gotten over the Preston curse, a team they've just not beaten in I don't know how long it is at this point, but it's their 7th win in 8. Frank Lampard's Blues just keep on, or Sky Blues, should I say, keep marching on towards surely a playoff place now at this rate. I mean, they are in such good form. They just look fantastic. Again, really creative, clinical in front of goal. They just look like they're full of absolute confidence at the moment. And they're a team that I don't think anybody would want to be in the way of at the moment. We always talk about sides who finish the season strong, get themselves into the top 6 and carry momentum into the playoffs. That's exactly what you need to navigate your way through them or give yourselves a chance. And I think Coventry at the moment, we've seen all season, their underlying numbers have been right up there towards the top end of the Championship. They've just been kicking themselves in the foot, or they've been just throwing away games and not getting the points they should be. So it's good to see them finally sort of living up to the numbers and the hype and the squad and everything that we expected of Coventry at the start of the season. And they're certainly going to be a team to watch, because not only are they favourites to get into the playoffs right now, if they go in with this sort of form, who can say they won't have a huge chance of going all the way. Norwich 4, Stoke City 2. Norwich doing what they do at home, and we've seen them do many, many times this season. And the big thing for Norwich is Josh Sargent looks to be back to his best, which is a huge, huge concern for any of the teams in and around them. A dominant performance, very creative, very free-flowing, looked incredibly dangerous, and, well, battered Stoke. I think they'll be disappointed they conceded 2 goals, but still, going forward at home, at times Norwich can be absolutely scintillating. I still, unlike Coventry, worry of Norwich's consistency. I still think away from home they can come undone, and they will have to improve there, I think, before I get too behind them as a playoff sure contender. I mean, they're right in the battle, so you can't say they're not a contender at the moment, but to truly trust that they'll get ahead of a West Brom and or a Coventry, or maybe jump ahead of Blackburn at the moment to get in there, I still think there are a few things I'd like to see from them, but certainly in this form at home, they are absolutely untouchable, and it was another great performance from them. Stoke, it's a bit of a shame really that they just can't really gain much consistency under Mark Robins. I think it is always tough going to Carrow Road when Norwich are in this sort of form, so they can't really judge this result too much. I think there's more good to come from Robins and Stoke, and I think when they get players back, as they have done, they will start to slowly progress under him, albeit it does look like they're going to be on course for another typical Stoke finish in the bottom half of the Championship. Pompey 2, QPR 1. Portsmouth's home form is quite incredible, and it is the fortress at Fratton Park that I think we all expected it to be. And I'm delighted. I'm really happy for Pompey, really happy for their club, their fans. They are surely giving themselves a chance, or have gave themselves a great chance of staying up now, which is a long shot away from where they looked at times before Christmas, when they were losing games away from home heavily, struggling to convert games into victories at home, but now they've really made Fratton Park a tough place to go. And QPR, they ain't any pushovers. They've been very, very good at times this season, up against some really good sides, and have been in decent form themselves not too long ago. So it's a huge result for Pompey, and you'd like to think, as long as they can just keep up what they're doing now, they will be safe. And credit to them for sticking with John Messinio when many other clubs may have panicked. They stuck to their guns, they kept their gaffer, and I think they're starting to reap the rewards of it now. So delighted that Pompey's stay in the Championship looks to be extending. QPR, there's no shame in losing at Fratton Park at this point. They just need to get a bit more consistency if they are to hang in there with this ginormous playoff scrap. Swansea 3, Blackburn 0. A really big win for Swansea. They've had a tough time of it of late, so to win in this fashion is really, really promising for them. I don't think there'll be much to come from the rest of the season for Swansea. They probably will finish in mid-table, where we sort of expected them to finish anyway, but this sort of stops any worrying slide that they may have ended up embroiling themselves into something a little bit more serious. This proves that this Swansea side are better than where they are. They shouldn't be in such a torrid run of form, and hopefully they can get things back on track going forward. Blackburn, however, this is what Blackburn do. You know, they've got themselves comfortably in the playoffs. I think they had 3 wins from their last 5, and then they throw in a performance and a result like this, and it just makes you doubt them. You know, we've seen in past seasons, Blackburn have always been in and around it, but they fall apart and they fall away at the crucial moment. Who'll forget that final day against Millwall a couple of seasons back? So I just worry that when it comes to the crunch, Blackburn are susceptible to throwing things away, and they might do that with the playoffs again this season. They're another side who, if they were just a little bit more consistent, they'd be comfortably in there, but they're just giving the teams behind them a chance to catch them, and this is certainly not the result of a team who want to be securing a place in the top 6. And talking of the top 6, West Brom 2, Oxford 0. A dominant performance by West Brom. Utterly dominant. Oxford didn't really muster anything here. And after that really good start under Gary Rowett, 3 defeats in 5, I'd like to think again they've gave themselves enough of a buffer to not fall into danger. But I just worry that Oxford can get on a run like this, and maybe once the new manager bounce dissipates, they might find themselves in trouble. It depends on what happens below them. At the minute, I still think they've got enough of a buffer and they should be okay. But still, I don't want them to go through the same cycle that they were under Des Buckingham, where things were starting to get a little bit worrying. Then they pulled away again with Rowett coming in. Now they might start slipping and sliding towards the bottom again. It might depend, as I say, on the form of the teams below them. But at the end of the day, going away to West Brom, it's not easy. West Brom are very, very good here. Looked every bit a playoff side, as you'd expect. And we're maybe just a little disappointed they didn't have more than a 1-goal lead going in to stoppage time, but they made sure of it at the death, and are still a side under Tony Mowbray, who I feel pretty confident are in good hands to get themselves into the top 6. Watford 2, Luton 0. The derby I still don't know the name of, but this, I think the story is more about Luton Town. I mean, don't get me wrong, in a derby game, quotes, cliches, form goes out the window, yada yada. And I guess in a sense for Watford, it kind of did. I know they went and won at Boro the week before, because of course they did, and that was their first win in a while. But for me, this isn't just about Watford looking good and maybe getting their season back on track to a degree. It's about Luton Town looking awful. And when you're in a position that Luton are in and you're going into a derby game, this is the sort of fixture that can ignite a fire beneath the team and maybe can spark something to get things moving back in the right direction. But unfortunately, Luton were anonymous in this game. It was another really, really poor display, and in the worst potential fixture for them. You know, not only were they in a tough position, as it were, they've now lost to their rivals, and the new manager they've brought in for Rob Edwards at Bloomfield, unfortunately, hasn't really made much of an impact whatsoever. And for 2/3 of the season, I honestly thought Luton, okay, they'll get out of it eventually. They're too good not to. But they are staring down the barrel of a double relegation, which is unacceptable. You know, when it happened to Sunderland not too long ago, they were a mess off the pitch. They were just destined to go down again because they were in free fall on and off the pitch. I can't explain what has happened to this Luton Town side. I don't know if it's mentality within the squad, if there's issues within the dressing room, maybe there's issues higher up. But this proved that Rob Edwards wasn't the only issue, because Matt Bloomfield hasn't really gotten things going either. And I don't see any other issues or any glaring reasons as to why Luton should be facing double relegation. With Sunderland, as I say, you could see why, and plenty of other clubs it's happened to them because there's been issues on and off the pitch. But this Luton Town side should be nowhere near where they are. And unless there's stuff going on that we don't know of, this could be one of the most embarrassing double relegations we've seen, because they were fairly competitive in the Premier League, as competitive as a newly promoted side can probably be nowadays with the gap between leagues. But still, they come down with a squad that had players who played at that level, forwards who you'd class as some of the best at this level. And for them to be in the position they're in right now, I can't quite believe it. And I honestly can't understand it either. So if there's any Luton fans, please enlighten me on what might be going on. Because to see a team come down and be this poor and possibly or likely go down again could be one of the worst back-to-back relegations, as I say, we've ever seen. Finally, flipping the script to the top of the Championship, Sheffield United 1, Leeds United 3. I did back in my prediction video that Leeds would win 3-2, but I tell you what, this was an impressive victory. And I don't think it was just the win. The points gained on a direct rival, that was important here. I think it was the manner to which Leeds went about it. You know, in the first half, credit to Sheffield United, they started really well. They targeted clear weaknesses, or one of the very few weaknesses that Leeds have, being the goalkeeper, and they got themselves ahead and maybe could have had more. But I tell you what, Leeds showed what a promotion side is all about, because even at a place like Bramall Lane, 1-0 down, up against a direct rival with so much at stake, that second half performance was something else. The final 15 minutes were fantastic, and the goals they scored, the way they put away Sheffield United, it felt like a big performance and victory, and one that you would like to think, and I know Leeds have been susceptible, and this isn't me joking about them falling apart or whatever. I think Leeds fans will also agree they are susceptible at times to when the pressure heats up. They can throw away good advantages and positions, but they're 7 points clear of Sheffield United now. And let's get the league table up, as we always round up with the league table. 7 points clear of Burnley, 13 clear of Sunderland. We talk about a top 4. I think they're clear now. And if not the title, they definitely should be in the top 2. Even if they have a few wobbly results and Sheffield United put a bit of pressure on, that's a big gap to Burnley. Leeds just have to maintain a decent level between now and the end of the season, and they should be in the top 2. So it feels like a big win for Leeds United, and I'd be surprised if they didn't convert it to automatic promotion from here. As for Sheffield United, they will start to feel the jitters now, because they could have pulled away from Burnley themselves. It's gave Burnley real hope. 2 points is the difference. Burnley still have to improve massively and have to perform more like what they did against Sheffield Wednesday, but the fight for second could be a straight-up shootout between the pair of them. I'm not too sure Sunderland have quite enough to stick with the top 3 unless they start tripping over each other. I think Sunderland are out of it now, but they will still, I think, comfortably consolidate a place in the playoffs just because of the great advantage they've gave themselves. 11 points to the next best side, and then you look at the playoff scrap, to which you could say it goes all the way down to 14th, 13th, but me as a Boro fan, I think we're on the brink of being out of it. If I'm absolutely honest, I'm not even going to talk about the run we're on, but West Brom and Blackburn hang on in there. I think Coventry, it's a matter of time before they get themselves in there and potentially consolidate. Bristol City are maybe a side to keep an eye on. As I say, I'm not too sure about Norwich, Watford, etc., and the consistency of them. The same for Millwall and Sheffield Wednesday. So for me right now, I'd probably put my money on West Brom and Coventry, but we'll see what happens in behind them. And then down the bottom, look at that gap. I mean, Cardiff have a game in hand as well, as do Hull City and Stoke, to be honest with you. So Luton are 5 points adrift now. That could grow massively, and I think maybe Cardiff and Hull play each other tonight. So it might not look good for Luton one way or the other, because one of them is going to pull away from them, if not both or all three. So Luton look desperate right now. As I say, I can't quite believe the position they are in. And I could also say the same for Derby, who felt relatively solid earlier in the season. But I remember in pre-season saying that Paul Warne's record at keeping teams up in the Championship has never been good. So was it really a shock to see that they took a turn for the worst and he lost his job? Probably not. So now it's all on John Eustace, who's, well and truly put himself in the firing line to keep this Derby team up, because if he doesn't, his decision to move from Blackburn might look like a really, really stupid one if he finds himself in League One next season. I would never have thought Derby would be there. I honestly thought they would have enough. They're 4 points adrift, and Plymouth, unbelievably, you wouldn't have said this a few weeks ago, look probably the more likely of the three to give the teams above them something to worry about. But I still think away from home they've got massive, massive issues. So I don't know if that bottom three will stay as is. I honestly look above them, and I think Stoke are too good under Robbins to go down. So maybe Hull and Cardiff are the two who have to be a little bit concerned. But I think I've seen enough from Hull as well to think they'll be okay. So maybe it's three of the bottom four. Cardiff might be the ones who have to be careful. I don't know. But the bottom three, it is certainly a fight that is massively fascinating. Maybe from 19th down at the minute, you would say they're all in a little bit of trouble. But let me know your thoughts on your team in the comments. Again, sorry the roundups come late. This is what happens when they chuck games on that are so big on a Monday night. Don't know if I'll have time to predict the weekend's games, because obviously got a weekend game or a midweek game to look at and then preview at the weekend from a Boro point of view. So I'll try and squeeze out a prediction video if I can. But until then, if you've enjoyed the video and you've got thoughts on your team, leave them in the comment section below and hit a like on the video and subscribe for much more content to come here on the channel. But until then, take care, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next